West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Last week's Supreme Court rulings have left millions of Americans shattered and confused as to what the future looks like, and with good reason. The decisions sent a signal that these mostly white, religious, conservative, Federalist Society allies seem to be intentionally targeting the progressive strides this country made in the 20th century, with the collateral damage aimed squarely at our younger generation. Now, if you want proof, look no further than Wisconsin, Missouri, and Kentucky, which are just some of the states looking to end educational grants to minority students in the wake of the affirmative action ruling. For reference, the University of Wisconsin-Madison has roughly 50,000 students, and only 1,200 are Black. While these schools are pulling grants to minority students, Donald Trump's designated xenophobe, Stephen Miller, issued a warning letter to 200 law schools that they had better stop trying to make their schools more diverse, because that amounts to discrimination against white people. And that seems to be this court majority's bottom line. Preventing what they view as discrimination against the real victims, white conservative Christians, while authorizing discrimination against everybody else. In just this past month, the Roberts Court granted permission to discriminate against the LGBTQ community. They struck down decades of guardrails to ensure that our schools reflect our society. And they blocked the Biden administration from forgiving student loan debt, ruling that they didn't have the authority to divert funds to help financially struggling Americans, even though they let the Trump administration divert funds for the border wall to keep out brown migrants and to ban Muslims from entering the country. So the Roberts Court, to them, some discrimination is A-OK, just as long as white conservative Christians maintain a top-tier privileged position in our society. Got it. To be clear, the Supreme Court has always been the Republicans' ultimate insurance policy, and they've been working on building a court-based veto against social change for decades. Here is then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell after he sealed the current conservative majority on the Supreme Court for the next half century.
We made an important contribution to the future of this country. A lot of what we've done over the last 4 years will be undone sooner or later by the next election. They won't be able to do much about this for a long time to come.
One thing this court has made clear is that they are unafraid of ripping up decades of precedent to impose their right-wing vision on America, which should send a chill down your spine because it means nothing and no one's rights are safe. But if you are young, understand that your generation is target number one. Joining me now is Sherilyn Ifill, former president of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund and the inaugural Vernon Jordan Endowed Chair in Civil Rights at Howard University. As part of her role at Howard, she will soon launch the school's 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy. And I want to start, Sherilyn, by it's wonderful to see you and congratulating
Thank you.
and to be in a space named after the great and wonderful Vernon Jordan, who's
Absolutely.
such a dear, wonderful man
Yes.
and a great man. And you're a great woman. So
Thank
I
you.
want to start with that.
Thank you.
That was the good note. That
Okay,
was the good news.
good
Let's get to the bad news. A really smart friend of mine said to me this morning that what this Supreme Court ruling in affirmative action proves is that they're not against affirmative action because they're fine with it for like the well-to-do. What they're against is us. What they don't want is people who look like you and me in elite schools.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Joy, in the opening when you talked about this as a decades-long program. This is essentially all part of a program designed to essentially dismantle the infrastructure that was created after the civil rights movement to try and move us further towards equality. And, these are people who have always believed that that project was worth engaging in. John Roberts has had his long-term hostility to the Voting Rights Act and to affirmative action. We should never forget one of his earliest decisions was in the parents involved case, which involved a case of voluntary desegregation efforts in K through 12 schools in Seattle. And in Louisville, Kentucky. And that was the case where he famously said the only way to stop discriminating based on race is to stop discriminating based on race, right? So he's got the bromides, he's got it down to math.
Yeah.
What is most disturbing is seeing his willingness to use and weaponize our tools, Brown versus Board of Education, the 14th Amendment in this project.
Yeah.
The conversation about Brown in the decision is mind-boggling, but it is part of a larger hijacking of Brown for their purposes. Last year, it was Justice Alito who used Brown for the proposition that sometimes we have to overturn cases, and this was his rationale for overturning Roe. So we see them using the very tools that were created for us for their project. And the 14th Amendment is one of them, which is why I'm starting this center, because I think there's such a lack of understanding of what the 14th Amendment means and what its intentions were.
It's fascinating. The most, as I read through it, they cite Plessy a lot.
A lot.
Which is weird. Thomas, his first citation is Plessy. They cite Brown a lot. And in Gorsuch's concurrence, he cites Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which has led some people to refer to this affirmative action decision as, in their minds, it's Brown v. Board for white people, basically.
I agree with you. And I think that's why so many people are concerned about the slippery slope. Like, let's be clear. This decision responds to Harvard and UNC's race-conscious admissions program. It does not talk about businesses or employment or any of the other places yet. But I think that's why people have the concern, and understandably so. I don't think it's outrageous for people to see the writing on the wall. And that's what this term on the court has been about. The jig is kind of up.
Yeah.
We now are very clear about what the intentions are, and we're very clear that they don't intend to stop.
No.
Even the loophole, there's a loophole in the majority opinion where you can tell your story, which is exactly what happens. What he's describing is in fact the Harvard admissions program. But he says that would be okay, but not this. And this is the other thing that disturbs me, Joy. Clarence Thomas, in his concurrence in the case, says that these admissions programs discriminate against Asian American students. And that's a heavy charge. It's a serious charge with implications for how we talk about race in the country, for our connection to other communities, for political power, and so forth. But there was a trial in this case, a 2-week trial in the Harvard case. Evidence like you can't imagine, charts, graphs, studies, expert witnesses, students testifying, and so on and so forth. And a federal judge made findings in a 130-page decision that meticulous findings that the program did not, in fact, discriminate against Asian Americans, and that decision was upheld by the 11th Circuit. That's a factual decision. The Supreme Court can't reverse a factual decision, but you see them saying it nevertheless because it's so useful.
And the thing is, a lot of what they said sounded like sort of Rush Limbaugh right-wing talking points, and the outcome of it has been a couple of them. Stephen Miller, the dedicated xenophobe from the Trump administration, has now issued a warning to law schools all over the country, essentially saying, we're going to be watching you, and if you admit too many blacks, we're going to sue you again. Because they're only seemingly targeting, they don't like black and brown. They throw in Hispanics sometimes, Latinos sometimes, but they really bugs them that black people are at these schools. And then you had Senator, what's his name, from Ohio, J.D. Vance, write a letter to several top schools, including Brown University and others, listing all of their reactions to the decision and essentially saying, how are you going to ensure that your campuses become whiter? Because if you don't, we're going to use all of the full power of the federal government to punish you.
You know, it's so fascinating. So first of all, the fact that the court has now emboldened these forces is something quite interesting. It made me even wonder about the loophole language. I wondered if maybe the Ed Blum, Stephen Miller industrial complex of, suing and carrying on about affirmative action is too good to let go. Because this is exactly what we would expect. I looked at Stephen Miller's letter. The last words of it are, "You are hereby warned."
Yes.
I mean, these people have delusions of grandeur, but it's enough to frighten universities and their general counsel.
Absolutely.
And so it is effective. And so what's not done by the decision, if universities are not careful, may well be done by the self-policing and the fear.
You'll be afraid.
And that's why this is an important moment, Joy, because people have to decide what they believe. Of course, they are going to comply with the Supreme Court's decision.
Yeah.
But they should take them at their word. If there's a loophole, there's a loophole.
Yeah.
And they should use it. Yeah. And they should demonstrate their ongoing commitment to having a diverse student body.
And I wonder how they would make the argument. How are they going to make the argument that we looked at your school class and there are too many blacks in it? That's going to be a hell of an argument to try to make, even in front of this Supreme Court, that we think you have too many, not enough white people. And now you guys are counting by race. Now that means you're looking by race and saying there are not enough white people and
That's
too many
exactly
blacks.
right. And I think Ketanji Brown Jackson kind of hinted at that at the oral argument in the case when she suggested that some of these arguments might create the opportunity for an equal protection claim that black students would bring about the way that race is used. But of course, J.D. Vance is not describing this as a legal matter. He is using this as a way of, I don't think he's even thinking about how this might play out in a court. Yeah. What he wants is the political favor that he gets from saying the most extreme and most outrageous thing.
It is an amazing thing that anti-blackness and really open anti-blackness has become, the Republican Party doesn't feel they have to hide it anymore. They can just do it openly.
The question, Joyce, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, it's a bad thing because we're getting what we're getting. Yeah. But it also is true that you and I have known for most of our lives that this has already been true.
We know how
and
they feel
we have
about
been
us.
Accused of race baiting. We have been accused of dog whistles. We've been accused of paranoia. And we've been gaslighted on it. 100%. And I like an enemy I can see and fight. Yes. I feel emboldened for that fight. I feel like we have to gather our own weapons. And now, Joy, we have to pursue what we really want. We have compromised. I mean, affirmative action based on diversity was a compromise. But Bakke was considered a loss in the civil rights community. Yeah. We have been willing to compromise. Yeah. They're not willing to compromise. They're only willing to have 100% of the power and 100% of the advantage. And that can't hold. Yeah. So now let's begin to talk about what do we actually want in these or other institutions? Yeah. What are we looking for? And that's the process I'm engaged in right now, talking with people around the country about this very issue, because I feel excited about us pursuing the America that we want.
It is Friday, the 7th of July of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. That's right, folks, it's a liquid diet today. We might have a few morsels of actual nutritious sustenance. Try saying that real quick on a Friday morning. All right. How are you? Have you found any packets of cocaine in your cubby? Parents? If you have, I don't know. Take your kid aside and give them the talk. That's right. Do you know where I can get more? You're a kid. You know where to get this stuff. Okay. Don't talk to your kid like that. That's irresponsible. Anyway, is that the big story? Whenever we hear these stories, we have to, I don't know, maybe look for some connections that border on the conspiratorial, which means that we have lowered ourselves to their level, I guess. Regardless, it seems a little too cute that this cocaine just happens to show up. I'm just saying. Right around the time that Junior, you know which Junior I'm talking about, his girlfriend and he broke up over the weekend. And he's been a mess. Have you seen him? Oh my God. So obviously the accusations of cocaine use by Junior has skyrocketed. So what happens whenever there's some sort of news that's going to come out about malfeasance, fraud, criminal behavior by any of the Trump kids? Hunter Biden is not leading the news on some sort of made-up thing, where apparently Hunter Biden, when he came to visit the White House, walked in through the West Wing, put his cocaine and I guess other personal effects in a cubby, and then took a tour of the West Wing. All right. And the media is lapping it up. That Norah O'Donnell, she's like, I don't know about her. I haven't known about her for quite a while. She's kind of, I don't know. She's kind of, you got to watch that lady. Because I think she might be up to something. And she has been up to something for a while. Regardless, the insinuations, apparently, is what she has been making, is that actually this cubby is very close to where people like Hunter Biden would park his car. Get out of here. Now, traditionally, family members and friends of the family of the president enter through the East Wing, not the West Wing. But hey, if you're willing to steal a laptop, give it to a blind computer technician, and have that blind computer technician announce to the world that he has Hunter Biden's laptop and they found all sorts of stuff on it. The people who would steal Hunter or Joe Biden's daughter's diary. And people got criminally sentenced for that, by the way. Convicted. Got her diary and then tried to make up stuff with that. But Hunter is always a bigger story than Ashley. Ashley is the daughter's name. My God. So now we're supposed to believe the insinuations. This is all birther BS anyway. I mean, these are the same people that tried to pass off, and apparently very successfully, because they got 70-some-odd million people to believe it, enough that they're willing to go out in the streets and cut people's throat because this is Rwanda now, buddy. Jesus. They got their Rwanda radio, and they're riling up everybody. Those evil Democrats. It's democratic. If you're going to call us evil, at least be grammatically correct. Jesus. Evil Democrats. Why can't they just say that? I'm an evil Democratic. Democrat. They want to put the emphasis on rat. Okay. But don't we dare put our foot down and tell them that's enough, because apparently we will be accused of being so violent. Okay. They've been waiting. And maybe we should finally actually punch the Nazis and tell them to, hey, shut up. Not canceling you? Well, actually, we are. I don't know what's so wrong with canceling a Nazi. Why does a Nazi have to have the same amount of rights as the rest of us when their whole reason d'etre... Notice how I did that? I got the guttural in. Their whole reason for their existence, their reason of life, is to destroy everybody's rights and take over. Trying to get rid of the classic movie channel because they don't want us to know anything about our heritage, about our culture, about our history. Because there's a lot of Nazi punching in those movies. Can't have that. You can fund Nazi Jungen schools, charter schools, and home schools, but don't you dare bring books. The classics, Madame Bovary. There's too much sex in Madame Bovary. There's too much sex in botany. All that flower sex. Ew. You mean every time a bee is going into a flower it's having sex? Icky. Jesus. Oh my God. People are so, I don't know, repressed. And what does that repression manifest in? Bad behavior. Criminal, soul-sucking, soul-destroying behavior. Victimizing the world around you and using it for, I don't know, compensation for one's own failings to deal with one's own self. And now we have to give deference to that. I am sorry. I know. I'm not going to keep those people from voting. But I don't know why Nazis get to have why do they have to be able to tell us what to do? This is a representative democracy, not a republic. I keep telling this guy, this Bircher, that. Keeps wanting to call it a representative republic. I told him, you just want to call it the fatherland. Come on. There's a difference between the motherland, a representative democracy, and a fatherland, which always has republic. Republic. And it's, I don't know, mission statement. Gotta have a mission statement. Used to call it a manifesto. That was a mission statement. Still is a manifesto. Just letting people know. Everybody out there in business with their mission statement saying, oh, these woke people. You have a manifesto, pal. Che Guevara had a manifesto. No, it's a mission statement. See? Okay. It's Friday. We can't live by liquid alone. The French 77s are virtually mixed and poured for your virtual and maybe even analog imbibing pleasure if you feel so inclined. No, we have some actual morsels of protein and carbohydrates so that you have a nutritious start to your day, at least of the mind. Okay, well, at the top, Stephen Miller and his saber rattling is just proof that even legal threats that have no standing to enforce the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling is enough to frighten universities from admitting students of color. Okay. Just like a Teutonic Germanic type of society from days past. And I kid you not. On the rest of the menu, 3 crosses were found burned outside a small Los Angeles church. Sylmar, to be exact, is where it was. The Oregon Department of Justice reported a 178% spike in bias incident reports since 2020. Racial bias, LGBTQ bias, just, bias for anybody who didn't look like a white supremacist. Spiked. And California Governor Gavin Newsom demanded that the U.S. Department of Justice probe Florida for their unconscionable migrant flight scheme. Okay, probe them. I don't know if that's an investigation or some sort of medical procedure, but why don't we do both to be sure? After the break, we move to the chef's table where Tesla began laying off some battery production workers at its Shanghai plant. Shanghaied. That's what I'd call it. And the Russian tourist who defaced the Colosseum with a love note to his girlfriend says he was not aware the UNESCO World Heritage Site was ancient. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Page at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who will be attending Netroots Nation in Chicago this year. And we look forward to her attendance there under the literal Netroots Radio banner. Thank you, Kelly. If you out there in radio listening land would now take a gander across the page to the left from that chat room link and down just a skosh near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso type coffee drink, if you could send those funds to us once a month, we're able to pool those resources with other like-minded Patreonagers, and that really puts a big dent in our bills, and thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago, and that's no joke. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter while it's still there, or while we are still there as Netroots Radio, because Tom is getting us to bug out. But you can follow us on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Netroots Radio. You can do it. You can follow us on even YouTube. You can. But anyway, you can follow us there. And Tom takes care of those, so thank you, Tom. You can follow me on Twitter because I'm there for the duration. I don't know. I'm going to jump off the ship just as it slips underneath the waves, and hopefully I don't get sucked down in with it. I hope I don't. We'll see. Anyway, follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Coz, and that gets posted 10 minutes before showtime. And, of course, the show notes and links are where you can find the actual reportage. And I would suggest that you actually read the full articles because they're really illuminating one way or the other. They are. And if you follow my social media feeds, you'll find them because they're there. The links are there. Follow the links. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker. You can't do it by Stitcher anymore. TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes. Really, wherever podcasts can be found, you just can't find them on Stitcher anymore. Well, you can, but you got to get serious about it in an XM sort of way. All right. Dozen years. And somehow Sirius is taking over. So much for turning ourselves into a media empire. I guess we'll just have to be a tiny juggernaut of resistance. And that's what we are. That's our mission statement, our manifesto. Okay, enough of this riffraff. Let's get into the actual morsels that we have curated for you today here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So I guess I should go ahead and open up the link on the show notes and links diary so that we can get right into it. And who is this by? It looks like, oh my, staff at the Associated Press bring us this first offering. 3 wooden crosses outside a small Los Angeles church were found burned early yesterday, Thursday, and authorities said it was being investigated as a possible hate crime. Possible. Firefighters responded to a report of a fire shortly before 5 in the morning in the Sylmar area, that's in the San Fernando Valley, and found the flames were already out, leaving smoldering wood. Fire Department spokesperson Nicholas Prang said in a statement. It was not clear whether the flames simply went out or were extinguished by someone. Prang noted that a garden hose was nearby. One cross had either fallen over or been knocked down in a rock garden in front of Sylmar Christian Fellowship Church. The other 2 were scorched but remained standing. Sylmar Christian pastor Pierre Howard, who was black, said there had been no threats against the church, which he described as diverse. It's a shame that people still want to do things like that in this day and age, Howard told reporters outside the church in the northern San Fernando Valley, about 20 miles northwest of downtown. It's a multiracial congregation that we have, so there should be no issue. That is the issue. We have no issue, and I think it's just someone that had a bad moment in time and made a bad decision. You know, hooded types usually do make bad decisions, even when they're not wearing the hoods. Howard said the church has been in Sylmar for about 30 years, and he became pastor when his father passed away. We have a diverse community, he said. We have Hispanic, we have black, we have white, we have come as you are. We don't really care. We see everyone. If you're in the building, you're in the building. The LA Police Department said in a social media post that it was investigating with the fire department, the FBI, and the ATF. Limited information is available pertaining to the crime at this time, the post stated. However, the public can be assured that all investigative resources will be utilized to capture the person or persons responsible. Sylmar? You mean the Sylmar where racist LAPD cops go to retire? You mean that Sylmar? Offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is by Christina Giardinelli of the KATU staff out of Portland, Oregon. The Oregon Department of Justice's annual Bias Incident Report shows calls to the Bias Incident Hotline have increased by nearly 200% from 2020 to 2022. Bias crime reports to law enforcement agencies have also increased by 14% from 21 to 22. The anonymous hotline offers an alternative to reporting to law enforcement with supportive services such as advice on options, help with housing, and safety precautions like camera installations, etc. The hotline has seen an annual increase in reporting since the legislature-funded initiative began in January of 2020. For many, the spike is more than just a number. It's a reality they will live with for the rest of their lives. I will never be the same person again. It's affected every single element of my life on every level. I am not the same person I was before the assault, said the victim of a South Salem bias crime who wished to remain anonymous for safety reasons, obviously. The incident happened just over a year ago. Court documents show 24-year-old Jerome Ricks and his 31-year-old brother Brandon Tocaro pleaded guilty to third-degree assaults and first-degree bias crime. Ricks, who had previous felony convictions, was sentenced to just over 1 year in prison. Tocaro received 36 months of probation. The victim suffered multiple injuries, including a broken collarbone. He provided a picture of the scar and x-rays consistent with court records describing his injuries. He claims that prior to the assault, the brother who lived in a townhome unit near his had been harassing him for nearly a year. I was called homophobic slurs. I was called racial slurs. I was threatened violence, he said. He noted that he is a cis hetero white male. I'm not even a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm just a small feminine person. If they will do this to me, what will they do to an actual member of the queer community, he said. Life is never going to be physically or mentally the same for me. I'm going to be in physical pain every day for the rest of my life. I'm going to have PTSD. In recent months, KATU has reported a number of violent bias crimes, including the recent assault of a black food cart owner in Portland, Oregon. Final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy 1 month after migrants were dropped off in California with no explanation. The state's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Ron Bonta are both urging the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the state of Florida. On June 2nd, a group of 16 migrants were taken from El Paso, Texas, to New Mexico, and then flown by private chartered jet to Sacramento, where they were left on the doorstep of a Roman Catholic diocese in Sacramento. Immediately following the incident, the California governor said he and Bonta were met with the migrants and that he is working with Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg's office as well as area nonprofits to ensure the people who have arrived are treated with respect and dignity and get to their intended destination as they pursue their immigration cases. Newsom added, "My administration is also working with the California Department of Justice to investigate the circumstances around who paid for the group's travel and whether the individuals orchestrating this trip misled anyone with false promises or have violated any criminal laws, including kidnapping." In a letter to the DOJ sent yesterday on Thursday, Newsom and Bonta wrote, "Although separate investigations into potential violations of state laws remain active, the U.S. DOJ has a unique capability to investigate cases where, as here, the scheme stretches from Massachusetts to California. The letter continues. It is unconscionable to use people as political props by persuading them to travel to another state based on false or deceptive representations. We urge U.S. DOJ to investigate potential violations of federal law by those involved in this scheme. And thank you, Gavin Newsom, for doing that. Some of these people are supposed to be to an immigration hearing on the other side of the continent. This is unconscionable indeed. All right, let us now get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Asteroid Impact. As anyone who's ever fallen down a rabbit hole on Pinterest knows, Wes Anderson productions are so distinct that they've inspired lines of houseware items and furnishings. Yeah, really. Anyone going to an Anderson film pretty much knows what they're in for. His latest offering, Asteroid City, is another nested story, a movie about a documentary about a play. If this sounds confusing, it really isn't. Set in the 1950s, most of the action takes place in the play, which is actually presented like a typical movie. Beautifully shot, on film, and boasting a color palette that's likely to inspire even more Pinterest boards. The TV documentary footage is clearly demarcated by the fact that it's 4:3 black and white. Starring Anderson stalwarts like Edward Norton and Jason Schwartzman, this one also features some famous newbies to the Anderson universe, including Tom Hanks as a grieving grandfather and Scarlett Johansson as a film actress who's more than a bit reminiscent of era screen legends Marilyn Monroe or Kim Novak. The play part of the film is about a group of people gathered in a mock-up of a southwest desert town to honor some young astronomers, several of whom have just lost their mom. The theme is about loss, grief, and the process of trying to move forward, and is arguably the most mature and meditative film of Anderson's career so far. Nevertheless, Asteroid City is overall funny, quirky, and occasionally self-deprecating, with moments that are as bright as a summer day in the desert. While what you witness with this one may take some time to digest, and a second viewing might help you catch some of the subtle placements, ultimately you'll be moved by Anderson's approach to his story and warmly impressed by the production design and performances. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwan is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-hee. I've been talking today with Seung-hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Does a criminal defendant still have the right to confront their accuser? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Consider Adam Samia and Carl Stillwell, who were tried together for murder. After the killing, Stillwell confessed to a federal agent that although he had been at the scene of the crime, Samia had shot the victim. The prosecutor wanted the jury to hear the confession. But the Sixth Amendment guarantees a defendant the right to confront, that is, to cross-examine, his accuser. And here, Samia's accuser was the co-defendant Stillwell, who wasn't going to testify, which meant that Samia couldn't cross-examine his accuser. The judge's fix, that's in air quotes, have the federal agent who read Stillwell's confession to the jury substitute the word person for the name Samia, which fixed nothing because it was 100% clear that person referred to Samia. But when the Supreme Court decided Samia's case in late June, the majority held that as long as Samia's name was not read, his inability to confront his accuser didn't matter. Really, they said that. They also ruled that the judge's instruction to the jury to not hold Stillwell's confession against Samia, that is essentially to unhear what they just heard, cured the prejudice. 3 justices dissented. They said that for co-defendants in a joint trial, the decision meant that the precious constitutional right to confront your accuser had become, quote, a shell of its former self. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1998. That was the first day of a 48-hour general strike in Puerto Rico. The strike was called in support of telephone workers who had walked off the job 3 weeks earlier. The workers were protesting government plans to sell off the publicly owned telephone service to GTE, a private company based out of Connecticut. As the strike of the telephone workers continued, more and more Puerto Ricans rallied to their cause. A general strike was endorsed by more than 50 unions, along with other civic, political, and religious groups. The group of organizations leading the strike went by the acronym CHAOS. For 2 days, the general strike shut down almost all activity in the nation. Work at stores, banks, and the halls of government ground to a halt. Transportation ground to a halt as bus drivers and taxi cab drivers took to the picket lines. Many in the crowd waved Puerto Rican flags. In the streets, the chant could be heard, "Hilga, Hilga," or "Strike, strike." Many also chanted, "Never surrender. The telephone company belongs to the people." The strike won support outside of Puerto Rico as well. The Health and Hospital Workers Union 1199 in New York issued a statement of solidarity and a $100,000 donation to help support the cause. After the success and support of the general strike, the telephone workers remained on the picket line. The strike wore on for 41 days. In the end, GTE won the day. The company promised not to retaliate against any striking workers. But when they took over, the company reduced staffing through so-called voluntary layoffs and early retirements. This is yet another chapter in the fight against privatization. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the diner of life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low 90s, so it looks like we're having a cooling trend. Plentiful sunshine, though, with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the mid to upper 50s. Winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10. And sunny skies tomorrow with highs in the low 90s again. Winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. It looks like we're going to be hovering in the low 90s over the weekend, so we look forward to that. And relatively cooler nights, at least in the mid-50s, so we look forward to that as well. Grass pollen is the major pollen here in our little Rogue River, and it is rated high. The air quality index is in the good range and has come down a little bit to 25 parts per million. And that daytime UV index remains very high at level 9, so you know to take care with that. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.92 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 65%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that's what the Weather Underground does. They aggregate all those little weather stations, private and otherwise, and that's how we get weather from around the world. London is 85 degrees and sunny. Paris is 87 and sunny with a advisory for disruptions due to thunderstorms, and when those thunderstorms hit Paris, they can be scary. I can physically attest to it. Rome is 92 and fair. Kyiv is 75 with thunder. Kabul is 70 degrees and cloudy. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 44 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy with a small craft advisory for winds on the bay at steady 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts up to 60. So don't keel over. And New York, New York is 81 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Bendu Deshmukh, Zhang Yan, and Brenda Go of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Electric car maker Tesla is laying off some battery production workers at its Shanghai plant. People familiar with the matter said to Bloomberg News, it's not clear how many workers may be let go or the specific reasons behind the layoffs, according to the report. Tesla did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The layoffs were first reported by a local online news portal, Deep Analysis, yesterday, Thursday, which said that less than 1,000 workers were employed at the factory's 2 battery production lines. Tesla's Gigafactory Shanghai, its largest and most productive plant, employs around 20,000 workers, including those in assembly building the Model Y and Model 3. And a news flash just came through that Elon Musk has signed an agreement with Beijing to agree with their core socialist values so he can continue doing business with China. The Founding Fathers warned that billionaire burgermeisters have no national allegiances.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anna Sampson and Federico Coco of The Washington Post brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The tourist who infuriated a nation when he was captured scratching a love note into the Colosseum has apologized, claiming with embarrassment that he did not understand the history of the Roman monument. In a letter addressed to the city's prosecutor and mayor, Ivan Danilov Dmitriev, aged 27, wrote that he was aware of the seriousness of his actions and apologized to the people of Italy and the entire world for causing the damage at the UNESCO World Heritage Site. By damaging the Colosseum, I acted with frivolousness, flippancy, and incivility to the detriment of other visitors, he wrote in Italian in the letter, which was translated by the Washington Post. I have no excuses. Dimitrov wrote that he would take responsibility for his actions and acknowledged the inestimable artistic and historical importance of the site. I am profoundly embarrassed to admit that it was only after this sad incident that I began to appreciate just how ancient this monument is, he wrote. His attorney, Alexandro Maria Torelli, said in a message that he had already come up with a plea bargain request that would keep his client out of jail. He said that the prosecutor has agreed to no jail time, though the plea was still being negotiated. Prosecutors and representatives for the Carabinieri, Italy's national police, could not be reached Thursday afternoon. The AP reported last week that authorities used photographs to identify the man as a visitor who lived in Britain. Dimitrov's face was visible in a video that went viral in late June, in which he used a key to write Ivan plus Haley 23 on a wall. The American visitor who shot the video said that he was flabbergasted and informed security about the incident. Italian officials expressed their outrage online, with the culture minister tweeting that the act was a sign of great incivility, and the tourism minister saying that she hoped the tourist would face sanctions. Italy's ANSA news agency reported that the penalties for the damage could include up to 5 years in prison and a fine of more than $16,000 U.S. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.